I just returned from Amsterdam, attending the Chocoa Chocolate Festival. It's a fantastic festival filled with chocolate makers, chocolatiers, and chocolate artisans from around Europe and the world. I got these fetching pink cacao pod earrings. They were made by Kuyay, a company in Peru. Admittedly, pink is more my color. There were some green and yellow cacao pods, which would be much more true to form. Cacao pods do not grow in pink. But I like these, so here we are. So I picked up a lot of chocolate. It was really fun, and I got to meet so many great chocolate makers and chocolate artisans, as well as cacao farmers, growers, people from West Africa, everywhere you can imagine, anything that has to do with cacao and chocolate. So over the next few days, I'm going to taste some of these chocolates that I picked up. I'm going to share it with you. And where to start? Well, I thought since I am highlighting my beautiful new earrings that we should start with Kuyay. So first thing you'll notice is that this is an 80% cacao bar. That means that it's a high percent chocolate. The 80% means there's 80% came from the cacao tree. The other 20% is sugar. So all this tells you is about how sweet the bar is. It doesn't tell you anything about the quality. In this case, we think it'll be a good quality bar. You can see here in French that this says de l'arbre à la tablette, which means from tree to bar. So this is a tree to bar maker. It is from Peru, and you'll notice there are a few certifications down here, one of them being USDA organic. So it's organic in the US. If I turn it over, you'll see that it is a 3-ingredient bar. It's here in both French and English. The ingredients are cocoa paste, cocoa butter, and sugar. Now, the sugar is listed in French as cane sugar, but in English as panela. Panela is an unrefined sugar that has its own taste. And so I won't know until we taste this whether it's really refined cane sugar or unrefined panela. I have a bit of a challenge with unrefined sugars because they add flavor to the chocolate, but at the same time, as a foodie myself, I want to eat the most natural food possible. So on the one hand, I like that it's not refined sugar, and on the other hand, it adds flavor to my chocolate. So not sure how I feel about that, but we'll see if it's really panela when we taste it. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the wrapper. I have already actually opened this bar, and look inside. The inside of the wrapper tells you even more information, and I know this can be overwhelming, but it's a nice thing to look at when you're savoring and tasting your bar. So it's saying that the cacao came from the Amazonas area in Peru here, and that it's distributed from Lima, the chocolate. And then it has an organoleptic profile, which is a fancy way of saying tasting notes. So these are the notes that the makers get when they're tasting the bar. You'll notice that they have high cacao notes, some acid. They say that there's some nut and some astringency, bitterness, so it's pretty balanced with a strong cacao note is what the maker is saying. I don't always agree with the tasting notes, so we'll see if we agree when we taste it. And then some beautiful artwork and some more information about the chocolate maker and the cacao. So when you're tasting the chocolate, it's nice to read that. So pulling out the chocolate, and I'm going to use all 5 senses to taste the chocolate. So the first thing we want to do is look at the chocolate. And here's more of the bar. I admittedly have already opened this one, so I've had a little piece broken off. But you want to see that it's shiny. This one's pretty shiny. It's in good temper. It looks a little bit, it's got a few chocolate crumbs on it, but in fairness, this has gone from Peru to Europe and back to Seattle again. So it's traveled a lot, so I wouldn't expect it to be less. It's in good shape considering. But it's nice and shiny. And one thing you may notice about the color is that the color is pretty light. You know, if you think of a high percent chocolate, this is an 80%, you might expect it to be a very dark color. But this is a lighter color. The color is often driven by the color of the cacao bean. And the more prized cacao beans are white in color, which these probably were white or something close to white because very light color. Bulk market beans are purple. So chocolates made with bulk market commodity cacao are going to look darker in color, even though they may not be a high percent. And then there's other things such as a lot of mass market chocolate uses something called Dutch processed cocoa, and that can be very dark in color as well. So the color does not tell you anything about the bitterness or the percentage of the chocolate. So keep that in mind. All right, so we've thoroughly looked at it. Now we want to break it in half, and you want to hear a nice snap sound. So remember your 5 senses are, we're going to look, we're going to hear, we're going to smell, and we're going to taste. I'm missing one. Look, hear, smell, taste. Oh, and feel. So you want to feel it before we break it in half. You want it to be nice and smooth. Now break it in half. Ah, nice snap sound. Means it's well tempered. Rub it between your fingers under your nose and take small sniffs. You want to notice what you're smelling. In this case, I'm getting some acid notes, which we saw in that flavor profile. There's some acid. A bit of cocoa or chocolate notes. Now I'm going to put it in my mouth. I might chew once or twice, but then I'm going to stop chewing. I'm just going to let it melt, get it all around the inside of my mouth. And what I think about as it's melting is, does it taste the same from the beginning to the middle to the end? Or do the flavors change as it's melting? So is it a one-note chocolate, or is it a little bit more complex with many notes? You know, how does the mouth feel? Is it smooth and creamy? What's the texture like? Is it chalky? Is it gritty? Or is it a fluid texture? So I'm going to be quiet for a minute, put this in my mouth and taste. I'm getting a lot of acid notes. Maybe a hint of some green banana. But I would say like an unripe tart raspberry note. Remember, cacao is the seed of a fruit, and so it often has some fruitiness to it that can develop during the fermentation process. So it's a pretty acidic chocolate, very fruity. I have some astringency. That's a way of saying that it dries your mouth out. So if you've had raw walnuts, or if you've been nibbling on green banana peels, not something I can say I've tried, but it's kind of that green banana, raw walnut skin sensation that dries out your mouth. If you're a wine drinker, you know, you've probably heard of tannins. So a little bit of astringency, which the organoleptic profile, the tasting notes, said it would have. And I get some of the cocoa notes. So it's a pleasant experience. All right, so stay tuned. Now that we have tried Kuyay, we have many more chocolates to try from my experiences at Chocoa in Amsterdam. I'll be back soon. Happy chocolate tasting.